supposed to be traveling. Good evening, and welcome to all our listeners and all our viewers. I'm sorry, George, I was just filled with all those gesticulations there. I'm still not used to doing this part of the program. Our chief suspect who is absent again. So forgive me, George. Forgive me.
Got to look at
Welcome
Doc in that pay,
every
Bev.
edition of Mek We Chat. Is that a good thing? We don't pay him at all. But there's always a punishment, for all these absences. So, but we will work on it. Yeah. Yes, but welcome everyone. It's Thursday evening. It's 8 o'clock. We are here on GRENADABROADCAST.com, and the purpose of us being here is for the program Mek We Chat. Mek We Chat is where we seek to connect our Caribbean people from wherever they are. One thing we don't leave our Caribbean nest where we go. We stay connected. And that's what we do on Thursday. We connect, we talk about our neck of the woods. And today, 25th of October, it is a red letter day for Grenada. So this evening's edition of Mek We Chat is going to focus on Grenada. And we are going to look at the Grenada Revolution. Its historic context rather than in the events. So let's get a picture of the period in which it happening locally, regionally, the people who know as tours across the world. And all the country, what is the lessons for revolution have we learned? There's going to be a revolution in the future, not predict, but based on history. We look back at some of and then we look back and we look at us now and predict. Learn the another revolution. Because of the things that we look at and we look about the historic revolution, which really everything we talk about until something as well, we have the child that show. We have Margaret Francis, who is in New York, that's in London, and then we have two guest subjects. We have Michael, who is a historian in Grenada, and we have Bert, who is Bert Brathwaite, and he is one of our experts. Thank you so much for history. This representative, and it doesn't seem to be here. It is not. Okay. Yes, I can see. Okay, very good, very good. We seem to be all after that because it's not seen in the crowd. During the evening, we will certainly get our audio so that we can get input into this discussion. Now, before we jump to that, we have a very interesting clip from one of the journalists, and in that clip, he seems to be giving indication why was not for the Grenada revolution. We have that so we practice that we have the people to perish and after 19 when they were speeches he made while he was Prime Minister of Prime Minister. So we're going to listen to what we have to say as we do this discussion about why the United States did not have been
that the people of Grenada and the leadership of Grenada are predominantly black.
Dr. Brathwaite will have a song. See that?
Yes, see that.
They said that 95% of our population is black, and they had a correct statistic. That the people of Grenada and the leadership of Grenada are predominantly black.
Are you hearing Mr. Bishop?
No. No, not hearing.
You're not hearing Mr. Bishop?
No.
Mr. Bishop doesn't want to talk to you guys tonight? Okay, I'll tell you what, let's try again and see if we get Mr. Bishop in here this time.
Yeah, the gremlins are at work.
Yeah, man. We are the experimental ground for gremlins, Margaret. Okay, stand by.
That the people and the leadership of Grenada are predominantly black.
Still not hearing.
Yeah, Dr. Brathwaite seems to be stuck.
Yeah, he ain't heard anything.
Yeah, he's not
getting sound.
It may be that he needs.
Okay, I'm not. Let's deal with Mr. Bishop first. For some reason, I'm hearing Mr. Bishop loud and clear at this end. I'm not sure why you guys are not hearing Mr. Bishop. However, I am going to get on the phone and speak to Dr. Brathwaite in just a minute, so you guys can go on with your conversation in the meantime. How about that? Hello? Beverley? Beverley? Beverley?
Yes, George.
Yeah, I was saying that I'm going to get...
The gremlins are really at play tonight, yes?
No, I was just saying that I'm going to get on the phone and have a chat with Dr. Brathwaite and see if I can get... Are you hearing me, Bev?
And on and off, you keep dropping. What I heard was that you're going to get on the phone and have a chat with Dr. Brathwaite.
So you guys can carry on your conversation. Okay.
All right, so we...
Go ahead with it.
Okay, we will.
Okay.
And I hope the folks out there are... Okay. We're having some technical challenges tonight, but we will continue with the hope that as the evening progresses, these will be sorted out. Now, George would have played that clip, and I think the listeners would probably have heard it. But those of us inside this room did not hear it. Just that was former and late Prime Minister Bishop was that Grenada, with its revolution and the predominantly the black population, may seem to be influence the millions of blacks in that country, and that is something which they would see as a threat. And he also challenged the reports under the revolution as compared with the United States. He said the United States imprisoned a lot more people during pollution. Of course, statistically they would have based on numbers and size of the country. He said in the first week of the United States Revolution, more than 100,000 Americans ran away to Canada, and hundreds of thousands were detained without trial, hundreds and thousands of American citizens. So the United States was in no position really to be speaking to Grenada about detentions and human rights abuses and all of those things under the revolution, because worse than that happened under the American Revolution. And I thought that was an interesting analogy that he made there to bring home the point he was making, that the United States would feel threatened by the Grenada Revolution because it's a predominantly black population that could possibly influence the blacks in the US. Michael, you're a historian. How do you put this in a historical context and probably help to make some sense of it for us? Yes, Michael. I'm asking, George probably needs to mute his mic.
Hello?
Yes. Michael?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Yes, did you get any of what I just said? Right. So, how do you put former Prime Minister Bishop? Go ahead, Michael. Continue to speak.
All right, there are two parts to this. Yes? There's a part from
Is something disturbing you, Michael?
I'm hearing George.
George talking in the background. George needs to mute his mic.
Yeah, that's why I'm telling you to continue speaking, because George is talking to Dr. Brathwaite, but he's not aware that his microphone to us not muted. So we're hearing him in the background. Right, but you continue to speak. The listeners are listening to you.
All right, fine. There are two aspects of the involvement of the black population or black history into the whole past revolutions. And one part that most times people are not really aware of is that without the Haitian Revolution or the Haitian involvement, there would not have been the American Revolution, because the Haitians supplied America with up to 1,000 officers who trained that ragtag U.S. Army to fight guerrilla warfare. So there you had this well-oiled British machinery that were defeated because of the involvement of the Haitians. So this aspect of the history is downplayed. So that too sent a very powerful message during that time. So it was very important to keep Haiti, at bay. In terms of Grenada, with the Federal Rebellion, the Federal Rebellion was a watershed for the entire British Army, especially because all the lessons learned from Grenada is what they took back to Crimea, and that was the last major colonial victory. So the lesson learned from the Federal Rebellion was very, very important. People too, maybe again we don't really spread that information around, is that without a strong Haiti, we have never had Simon Bolivar, because when he saw the oil is defeat, he went to Haiti, where he was able to rest his troops and got refinancing, and was able again to train his troops for that long mission in South America. So there are a number of parallels within the Caribbean that sometimes, I think the stories are untold, so people are not aware of that. So Grenada played a very important part on the international stage during that Federal Rebellion. And that Federal Rebellion sometimes the lesson is brought well into the Grenada Revolution.
Okay, so you mentioned Haiti, the Haitian Revolution, which is definitely one of the untold stories in this Caribbean. I would love for you to say a little bit more about that. The one thing you normally hear about the Haitian Revolution is that a Grenadian was involved.
Well, Henry Christophe came from Barbados.
Exactly. And usually that is just about the extent of the information.
That's true.
Yes, Michael.
Grenada, whether it was French or British, it was the third most important colony for the British or the French. So they have had quite a lot of not only trade but involvement or interchange with whether it was the Caribbean and North America. So sometimes we say that we have a very small population in Grenada, not maybe taking into consideration the thousands of people who have been through this island as part of whether it was a convoy system coming far as St. Kitts, coming down to St. George's, where they all assembled and moved to whether England or France, or the link between Grenada and the North American colonies. They had the black officers, especially from the Carolinas, when the British lost that war. A number of them came down and settled in the Tantine area, especially in that area called, well, no, it's GBS compound, but it was called Indigenous Point. And from there, they went to Canada, and from Canada to Sierra Leone. Hence, we have that, again, strong link with Africa. So, Grenada has been a pivotal, colony during the years. So, we have had influence internationally.
Right. This historic influence, although that short clip which was played from former Prime Minister Bishop, do you think that this historic influence of Grenada would possibly have played into what he was outlining in that address he was making to the people?
Well, certainly, you have to remember that up to 1960, Grenada was a seat of government for the Windward Islands. And also remember, the Windward Islands once comprised of Grenada, St. Lucia, Dominica, St. Vincent, and Tobago. And Barbados at one point wanted to join. So many things happen within the islands, but somewhat affiliated or controlled from Grenada. So we have always been a very important center, a Caribbean center.
Now, Grenada would have gained its independence from Britain in 1974, right? And then the Grenada Revolution came just 4.5 years after that. Can you put in historical context that period, that 1970s period, and the significance of gaining independence and then having a revolution?
Well, some people tend to link, Grenada too with, Malcolm X and some of the great guys, if you put it that way, over in the US. But you also to have remembered that you have the civil rights movement up to the 1960s. And again, we've had Grenadians over the years, whether it was Buzz Butler and so, who played very important role throughout the Caribbean. So that kind of sentiment or that kind of movement from Grenada, where again you had very strong, will and brave people, charting some course. It was really a new light, in the 70s for people throughout the Caribbean who were just coming out of, a number of scenarios, just the influence of the Black Power movement, but also had started from the 60s that moved towards independence. So that kind of new awakening and enlightenment serve as that kind of engine for many, young people at that time, and these people today are, some of our influential figures throughout the Caribbean.
Yeah. Margaret, you wanted to add something, Margaret?
No. I was going to ask him because given, you had a period of change, the world was kind of like going through that period of change, and I think he touched that with the independence movements that you had sweeping through the Caribbean and Africa as well, and together with the Black Power movement of the early 70s. So I was going to ask him what influence that had, but I think he touched on it pretty much.
Well, again, I do not bring the African aspect, which is quite relevant. But again, sometimes we lose that kind of whether it's touch or information, or maybe again it's because of the whole education process. Because Douglaston in St. John's was one of the main training ground for Africans to learn about the cocoa industry. Because remember, cocoa is not an African or Malaysian or East Indian crop. It really was an Amazonian crop. And places like Bonet and Bocage and those areas were the main experimental areas. So a lot of Africans journeyed to Grenada as well to learn those kind of skills. So as I said earlier, Grenada played a very important and pivotal role in the history of not only Caribbean, but again too, North America. As I mentioned earlier again too, we had the North American soldiers who were stationed in Grenada after the defeat of the British. And after a period, they went to Canada and then down to Africa. So we have constantly have movement of people. If we go back into the 1770s, when the French retook the island, and even the 1790s again, 96, a number of Grenadans were taken from Grenada and brought to Honduras. We tend to speak about the Garifunas, but we tend to forget the Grenada Taylor aspect of that.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Alrighty, folks. Looks like we have lost the network there for a little while. We are going to try to resolve that as quickly as we can. And in the meantime, I do hope that you would just hang on there for just a wee bit and enjoy some music from our little studio here. And we'll get back to you as fast as we can.
Why you look so mischievous?
Who does?
Your mic's muted.
Who, me?
Oh,
George.
I don't know.
George.
George had this mischievous look on his face.
No, it's just I'm just happy to see the usuals. I'm just happy to see that the usual suspects are back. You know, it was so lonely sitting here. You understand, Bert?
Yes, I'm here now.
Bert is.
All right, and you're hearing us now. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Okay, Catherine.
Now, where is Michael?
Catherine. Okay, so here she is. Catherine, you're back.
Oh, where is Michael? He probably left. He didn't realize we were coming back.
Why don't you send me his number on the chat and I'll give him a holler?
Right.
Yeah, send me a number and I'll give him a call. Margaret.
George, mute your mic when you're making those calls, okay?
Mute my mic. Why should I mute? I want you to hear everything I say. Nothing is done in private. I mean, come on.
No, while we're on, you have to mute your mic.
Is that the way it works?
Yes, because everybody can hear the conversation going on outside of what the other people are saying.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, the world heard you.
Okay.
Yes, that's the number there.
So I'll tell you what, you guys go ahead and have your conversation. Bert is in now, and he's been listening to you guys, so you can
No, I wasn't, George. I only caught about 5 minutes of it, and then the whole system seemed to have gone down, and I came back in on another link.
Okay.
So I only heard about 5 minutes altogether.
Well, you heard enough. Bert, I want you to tilt your laptop down a little bit so that we can get your head up a little bit higher. There you go, my friend. Beverly?
Yes?
Why don't you bung away while I go talk to the young man?
Okay.
Okay.
So, George, you don't want to run your commercials before we get back into discussion?
That's a pretty good idea.
Yeah.
So off we go.
Juve chocolates, cocoa nibs, and cocoa balls from Diamond Estate Grenada are now available at Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, Amazon.co.uk, and GrenadaMarket.com. Try their sensational touch of nutmeg and a touch of ginger chocolates, 75% dark and rich, 100% pure cocoa, and their 60% dark and sweet chocolate bars today. Amazon Prime members enjoy free shipping on these orders in the USA, Canada, and Europe. GrenadaMarket.com. When you can't come to the island, the products of the island will...
Conveniently located in the Grandstand Shopping Centre, for over 40 years, Food Fair has provided quality service at affordable prices. Now, grocery shopping is made easier and more convenient from the Food Fair web store.
Hey, babe. Listen, I need you to go down to Food Fair to get some groceries.
All right, no problem. Right away.
Thanks, babe. What are you doing? You're supposed to be going Food Fair to get a grocery, man.
I am, but didn't you know you can order your groceries online from the Food Fair web store?
Are you serious?
Of course. All you have to do is just to log on to www.foodfair.gd with credit card in hand, and with an order of $100 or more, Food Fair Granadas will deliver up to 3 miles away. And you don't even have to worry about your information, you know. Their safety measures are excellent.
So hold on. You just order online and Food Fair will deliver to you?
Yep.
Oh, baby, better hurry up and order, man.
I already did. They should be here any minute now.
Enjoy easy online shopping anytime from your home or office from the Food Fair web store. Food Fair, where you can fill your baskets without emptying your pockets.
For convenience, bill payments can be made at Bill Express at Western Union. Many of these are open until 6 p.m., including Saturdays. A 24-hour check drop box is also available at Grenlex customer care centers at Grand Anse and Bruce Street.
Okay, folks, you are back, and I see that Mr. Jessamy is back as well. He heard that I was coming after him, so he scurried back into the bedroom, eh?
The chat room.
Oh, chat room. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Michael. Good to have you back. Are you hearing us okay? Are you hearing us okay, Michael? Michael ain't hearing us. Catherine, are you hearing us?
I'm hearing you. I'm hearing you in an echo chamber.
Okay.
Yes. We have a little delay. Do you have a headphone, Michael?
Yes, I do.
I'm hearing him just fine.
It will probably help a little bit if you use it. So if you can put your hand on it, you could attach it to your ear and your device. But welcome back, listeners. We are technically challenged this evening, but we are here with you trying to bring you some very interesting information that I certainly am finding very interesting regarding Grenada's revolution and the historic context in which it happened. We're very happy to have Dr. Brathwaite able to join us fully. He was here halfway a while ago, so now he's with us fully. Right, Dr. Brathwaite?
I'm here. Good night to you all. Good night to everyone.
Good. And Dr. Brathwaite is going to contribute to this discussion. Earlier, we looked at the revolutions which has happened in this region, the Haitian Revolution, the Grenadian Revolution. We've also had the Cuban Revolution. We can't forget that one. And so the United States Revolution, the Haitian Revolution, the Cuban Revolution, and the Grenadian Revolution. So we can say we have had 4 major revolutions in the Americas. Those, Michael, you're a historian. Dr. Brathwaite, you're probably more familiar with this. Would I be correct in that analysis?
That I'm more familiar with? I didn't quite get
with some of these historic events.
Well, I mean, I'm not much of a historian, but I mean, I know a bit about the Grenadian Revolution. I'm not as the historians would know it, but I mean, just from a perspective of a lay person who had experiences indirectly with aspects of the revolution, family, etc., and contacts through that period here, being at university at the same time, etc. In the run-up to the revolution, I used to say being at the university because I was out of university by the time the revolution took place. My own, but sorry.
Sorry, go ahead, Dr. Brathwaite.
My own. As I said, basically, I can only really speak about the Grenadian Revolution, and it was a fascinating period of time in the Caribbean because we had just come out. The period with that power, discussions around the region, and all the UV students were very sensitized, basically. And I remember coming to Grenada, and at that time, was probably labeled as one of the troublemakers indirectly because of the group I was in, and because we were all university students. That actually was my first visit to Grenada sometime in around 70 or there around. And so then through my university days, I was able to sit and listen to many Grenadians, really. I got to be in the company of many Grenadians and heard of the discussions going on during the Gary period. And subsequent to that, was in Barbados when the revolution actually took place. And, for many of us, there was a period where of what should I say, concern, but hopefully anticipation of positive things. And then, you heard of what was going on through the years, and subsequently, Again, I was pretty close. Actually, I was nearly in Grenada. I had nearly come back to Grenada at the time of in the 83, when there was a crisis in October in 1983. Yeah, so it's an interesting period for the Caribbean. It is one which unfortunately, I don't think many young Grenadians are as aware of as they should be, because there are some lessons to be learned from that period. The necessity for maintenance of open democratic processes where people don't lose confidence in what's going on electorally, etc. That to me was one of the more important lessons to be learned, and I do feel that, like as other peoples do, when they go through periods like this, they make sure that generations following are aware of what went on, and the generations following are aware, and so that any successes that might have occurred, any disappointments that did occur, the country would never repeat it. And that's one of the things I would like to see for the future of Grenada, a greater sensitization to that period. And every school size should come out. I mean, for instance, here now in October 19th, there was a small group that met on the fort. Well, I wasn't here this year, so I don't quite know what happened this year, but that was just a small group that remembered what happened on the fort. And I believe that group got smaller with years. And then for the 25th, again, as I heard in one discussion program, it's much like, as a holiday. It's a holiday, really, with perhaps of great significance to the people who went through that period. But for the younger folk, unfortunately, I think they may have never been sensitized enough. And obviously, if they weren't in the past, unless they're going to the history field, they're unlikely to be in the future.
Yeah, Michael, I want you to...
Bev?
Yes, George.
Yeah.
Just before you move along, I want to ask Bert a little favor. Bert, we really, really like that beard that you're sporting, but do me a favor and try and keep your head in the picture of the frame so that people can see that beautiful nose and your beautiful that's more like it, my friend. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Sorry.
Okay,
good. Yes, Michael, two things that I want Michael to speak to, as he's the historian in this group. The Black Power movement, it's a term we have heard associated with Grenada's revolution and a lot of the support it got across the Caribbean. But what was this Black Power movement? We're not hearing you, Michael. Maybe your headphone's not working. You probably better disconnect them.
No. Yeah, we're not hearing you. Where did you disappear to?
Oh boy.
Yes.
Oh boy.
If you connected
I unplugged the headphone. All right, fine.
Right. Good.
Pardon?
You're back.
You now. Yeah.
Yes, you're back.
All right. So we had the Black Power movement in the U.S. Well, in a sense, we had all the, I will not say commotion or uproar with Martin Luther, but we had between like Grenada and Trinidad, you had that growing consciousness where you had a lot of young guys, if you put it that way, tell me that way, were getting out there. You had plenty pamphlets being published, trying to make people more aware of, who you are as a young Black person. So you had the people like, Teddy Victors, and you had the Thaddeus McQueens, and a number of young men who were really bringing out that kind of, I will not say the enlightenment, but making people, getting people to stand up and understand, who you are as a Caribbean person. So you had that kind of movement. I know of people who left Grenada on the way to Trinidad, and they were barred from even entering because, again, of that kind of, strong young Black men voicing, themselves within Grenada and Trinidad. So there are many stories in the Caribbean, not outside of the U.S. itself, where you had a bigger community. So you had that, within the Caribbean islands.
So the Black Power movement, then, it could be said that it was actually something which was happening in the United States and was adopted here. Would that be true?
Well, all right. Remember, we had that historian down Guyana. You had many young men that time growing their afros, and they're already sending out a real strong statement. You had the days of a bell bottom. The guys with a bell bottom, and you had the ladies with not high heel shoes, but some, I think they call it
the platform.
Or the platform, and things like that. And they were coming out there and showing that, we mean something. We are people. We are a force. And the established order didn't really like that. Also understand that from the 1950s, with the whole movement from Eric Gary, we were breaking that kind of barrier as well. That was another local, revolution in a sense. So you had more and more awareness. You had in the rural areas where people were sensitized about the value of themselves, the value of their labor. So again, you had people asking for betterment. So they demanded betterment of the leaders of society. So you had that strong sweeping movement, and maybe some people may not agree, but that was one of the spirit again that was really fueling a very strong West Indian cricket team. The Vivian Richards and these guys, the way they spoke, the way they walked, those sort of things. So it empowered the society of communities.
Right, but it was ironic, if ironic is the word, that in a region where independence was sweeping at that time, Jamaica gained its independence, then Trinidad, Barbados, and countries were gaining independence. Most of the leaders across the region at the time were Black people. And then all of a sudden you had this Black Power movement. Looking back at it, it doesn't seem to make sense.
Well, I don't know that you can say, no, you can't say that. I think, the Black Power movement was more than simply that. I mean, it was a matter of coming of age about, about Black consciousness and the fact that things Black and Black people were seen and perceived a certain way. We were looking at the world through certain lenses that were literally white. I mean, and I think if we also want to talk about the Black Power movement sweeping the Caribbean, we also got to talk about class and who the ruling class were. Moving into independence, we need to realize that you came from a slave society with a plantocracy, and in many cases planters ruled still, as Michael can attest to. In Grenada in particular, the plantocracy ruled still, particularly in the rural areas. So it wasn't simply people just getting up and saying Black power meant a lot more than that. It was about consciousness. It was about accepting you for who you were, that Black was beautiful, and remembering, in fact, you had that calypso that came out at that time. Black is beautiful. Say it aloud. Black is beautiful. I'm Black and I'm proud. So it wasn't simply people just saying Black power, and it was a movement meant to help Black people to see themselves a certain way.
No,
to take control of their destiny. Another area maybe we can look at again too. Remember, we had the labor movement at one corner, but we also had the end of the World War. And many of the people who went off to Britain, and when they came back, like the Errol Barrows, and so remember, we had the Black Caribbean men who really fought violently out in Europe there and they were never really recognized. And when they reached back, because they left with this whole thing, they went to fight for the country, and they're not even recognized. So when they got back into the Caribbean, that again was another movement. I know of guys who came back as teachers and headmasters, and they were really agitated because there they were. They went out there, thought they were doing something, and they were kept in corners. And in just recent times, when they had the 50th anniversary of D-Day, America allowed some black soldiers to carry the flag. And the British gave somewhat of a kind of half apology. So that itself, again, was another real big movement because there are all the guys from the Caribbean, from India and so forth, who went out there, and they were not regarded as members of that British Empire.
Yeah, and I think just to add to what you've just said, we need to also look at jobs that were available. There were certain jobs that Black people just could not hold. I mean, you walk into the bank and in the public service, which was then the civil service then, you walk in there, Black people were not in those jobs. You had to have a certain color, and that color was not dark.
That's true.
I sorry, I don't know the lady's name.
Margaret.
Margaret. Yes, I agree with both what Michael and Margaret said. Indeed, in fact, I think this was one of the more important periods of enfranchisement of Black people in this region, because I remember as a youngster going to church, and the white people, I'm Barbadian born, white people sat in the front of the church.
Yeah.
And so you came out of that type of period to a period where you were now fighting. It was a fight against the plantocracy. It was a fight about getting economic enfranchisement and your own social consciousness. Regrettably, I think a lot of the aspects of the social consciousness seem to have gone by the wayside and have not continued along those routes. And indeed, in fact, much of, one of the worrying things about today as against yesterday is that areas in which many folk were able to rise economically, those areas are now being pulled away, in the sense that people were able to make investments in small investments in various businesses, etc. The banks, you got access to banking, and you could make some money if the interest rates were right. And those type of things are being whittled away, not by governments, but by virtue of the world's economic order. And it is something of concern to me, what will happen with the middle class of tomorrow in the region. I think we haven't really come up with an answer to to buttress what is happening in the big global economic circle in that respect. But that period of that emanated out of the Black Power period was an intriguing period. For one, I went to school, and I went to one of the leading schools, and I came out and knew very little about Western history. I could have told you a lot about English history. And so you started to really understand a lot more about your history, and going to university at that time, those discussions were very stimulating, and if you were a conscious person, that thinking never left you.
Good. And I phrased the question or the statement the way I did to evoke this kind of passion about the Black Power movement, because that's what it was, a passion. But Margaret mentioned class. And in the midst of the struggle with color, there was also a struggle with class. And I think the classism still remains till today. What would you say, Michael?
Well, historically, Grenada was not known as an island, that especially Grenada and St. Kitts was not known as a place that had any big strife in terms of races. But class, certainly, it was a big issue. And if you want to quote from Dr. Cox, he has a whole book on that. And that has remained right into, the 1960s. And it's quite interesting because even today, we spoke about the the people who were the civil servants and so. But it was even in our police force, certain people could not have been members because of, who you are, your class, or, the things that were, were labeled, according to your ethnic group. So Grenada has been that, and we still have bits of this, town country issue. You are from some part of the country, and you don't know the modern day, so so we still have some little bits and pieces of that.
Right. I remember in 2016, during that attempt at constitution reform, Michael, there was one of the bills which spoke to class and color, and I remember people couldn't understand why you would want to have that in the Constitution. And it's exactly what we're talking about here, that the history is not taught. So a Constitution which was written, although you would say we got the Constitution in 1974, it would have been written before that. And it would have been written in a period when class and color meant everything in a society.
Yes.
When those things, yes, those things dictated where you lived, where you went to school, and as we said, what jobs you could get. And I'm sure it dictated who you could marry as well.
For sure.
Yes, all that was part and parcel.
Exactly. So when you look at the Grenada Revolution in that context, what are some of the things you would say would have really propelled the young men and women in that period? Because remember, Sir Eric was the prime minister at the time. And on paper, there should not have been a revolution against a Sir Eric, someone who was at the forefront of the struggle against the plantocracy, and someone who was at the forefront of trying to improve the lot of estate workers. So within that whole context, how come what would have fueled a revolution against a Black prime minister in that Black Power movement?
Well, again, maybe you can look at, people had expected so much, from our very own, and to see the opposite in terms of the silence, of the silencing of the media, the beatings, once you try to really expound, I would say new theories, although too around that time, we had liberated theology sweeping the entire Latin America and the Caribbean. But you had a new kind of enlightenment even within the church, so you had young men seeing things differently. You had more people moving around as well and getting, new ideas. And I think that really challenged the established order.
I think as well, the hierarchy of the government at that time, and obviously Sir Eric, etc., did not perhaps embrace, as a matter of fact, I could say they did not embrace the many aspects of the Black Power movement. They saw it as a challenge to their order. So while you're quite right, that is a very interesting point you raised, that they, I had moved around Grenada over the years, I couldn't help but be spellbound by people, many of the older folks, recognition of his works over the many years after he was not even after he died. But despite that, I believe that if they had the thinking at the time had evolved more in keeping with what was the thrust in the region, that lots of what happened would not have occurred. Because indeed, in fact, a lot of fundamental changes were made under the Gary period. As you listen and as you read about the history of Grenada, he was responsible for many changes.
Yeah, but I think too, we also got to look at the context within which Gary came on the scene and what was existing in Grenada at the time. And again, it comes back to, again, class. We talk about class and who were the ruling class. Gary came out of the trade union movement and obviously supported laborers and laborers and the working class. The petty bourgeois media, and they never really accepted Gary. He was still their enemy, and it was always in their interest to destabilize Gary. I mean, this is just in general. We can talk about what he became in the end, but certainly what he represented and what he did for people in the beginning, and when you understand the circumstances that existed then, you could also understand the loyalties that people would have had to Gary.
Let me advise the suspects that I see a countdown clock has come up. I tell you, we have technical challenges this evening. Apparently, we have just over 8 minutes left in this session. So we will continue to talk, and George is not at his station. So what's going to happen after 8 minutes is that the system is going to go down like it did a short while ago. But I think we will wait for George to come back and reboot us when that happens. But in the meantime, we'll continue with our discussion. Yes, so Margaret, you mentioned the class and the petty bourgeois. So Sir Eric then, because of who he represented and himself being born in rural St. Andrew, not having a high level of education, would you say he came from the wrong class? So there would have been a section of Grenada that would not have accepted him as prime minister, regardless of how bitterly he fought to get there.
Well, I mean, I would say, it's not simply accepting him as prime minister, but remember, he had now, placed workers in a situation where they would challenge the same plantocracy that was there, the business class that was also against him as well, because they saw whatever hold they had as being threatened, and who likes to be threatened in any way?
And as Dr. Brathwaite said,
yeah, Michael,
some of the expectations that were not managed.
Yeah, Michael.
Yes, go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, there's another aspect of things that I don't think that many people are fully aware of. If we go back into the 1960s and early 70s, you had again this movement sweeping through Africa. I had Nkrumah and Nasser and all these guys, and they really understood the importance of the control of the masses. And many people today, and even aspiring politicians, they don't realize the importance of being independent, financially independent. So when Blaise came on the scene in '67, and Gary was out of a job, it was very difficult for him to make ends meet. So you had people who were very, kind to him. They gave him boarding and so, but then they had issues. So because we used to see on Church Street, people supported him, to say right in tongue, and moving around was not that easy. The folks who really saw that new Messiah, some of them went around having things like what we normally call the harvest or the fair. Mm-hmm. And many of them ended up losing their little properties on the edge of estates because they had credited from the estate stores. Mm-hmm. And after that fair, during the fair, all the monies were just whisked away. So they were left now to carry the tail end of the expenses. And that really sent them more into poverty. So as Nkrumah and all Bourguiba and all these guys in Africa, Uncle realized that he too needed a very strong financial base. And that, we believe, caused some of the changes in his life, because without having that financial independence, as someone said to him, I will die a doctor, but you, every 5 years, you have to go back to the polls. And if you're not successful, you have nothing. So that is really is one of the reasons that started that kind of shift from the uncle that, people grew up with.
Mm-hmm. So that would definitely have been one of the elements or one of the fire sticks under the pot that started the revolution boiling. But again, when you look at the class structure, what was referred to then as the petty bourgeois, the people who would have owned most of the property and businesses in Grenada at that time, were they actively involved in the revolution or in planning the revolution and the overthrow of Sir Eric as it was at the time?
I will not say so. Maybe they had a few, sympathizers, and so that's from the landed gentry, if you want to put it that way, who had lost the properties because Uncle went around taking some of the estates. And
land for the landless, right?
More or less in. But generally, from research, I will not really say that, but that was a factor.
Okay. Margaret, you wanted to add something there?
No. I just, when he was saying that, Uncle went around on the estates, and I said, rule the land for the landless. If you remember.
Right.
And the question of the social change in the social order, where socialism was being much on most at that time as the way to go. You had the influence of what was happening in Jamaica under Michael Manley, etc. And well, around that time, just before that was the Rodney, your whole affairs with Rodney. So there was I think a move to create a new social order, and that's where the revolution would have gained its momentum from that order as well. And of course, the Gary government then embraced that type of thinking.
Okay, so when we look at promises that were made, and if not promises, but expectations that people would have had coming out of the whole labor movement and the labor and the workers' struggle, when you look at those unmet and unmanaged expectations, that is what, in this context that we are looking at the revolution, that is what you would say would have been the main fire in the engine of the people who would have come together to form this group that said things not going the way we want it and we're going to make a radical change. Michael?
It is an interesting period because sometimes we say this, but sometimes again too, especially in the rural economy, even when you had the strikes and so, why the strikes became violent in a sense, it's because people realized that after 2 or 3 days, food in the house. So
and we are going, Michael, we are going to disconnect. So you better hold that thought and think about it a little bit until George reconnects us for the next session. Because, yes, yes, George, we're going to go again at any minute now. Yeah.
You still there?
Yeah, we're still here. We're still here. Go ahead. Alrighty, folks, you can tell that we're just going to go down for a couple of minutes again, and we're going to be back up very shortly. We do apologize for all that's happening here this evening, I should say. But hang in there, and we'll be right back with you. Okay.
I'm back. I'm back.
Yes. Remember to turn your microphone off, Margaret.
Turn it off.
Nah.
Why?
I'm only kidding you. I'm only kidding.
We're
you.
live.
Yes.
Hello.
You're live. Yes, you're live. Yes. You're live.
Oh my God.
There she is. See her? Look at her. And here comes Beverley. And let's see how long it's going to take the other youngsters to show up as well.
Just as long as it takes for our computer to get connected again.
Which was not very long, was it?
Nah, not very long at all.
And there's Bert. We can hear Bert. We can see Bert, but we can't hear him yet.
Well, okay, good. We can hear him now.
Good.
There he is. Hello, Bertrand.
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's. Who's next? I wonder
Here's Catherine.
How do you know it's Catherine? I don't see her thingy.
I see her name.
Because we see her.
I'm not seeing her
thingy.
name.
Yes.
I see her thingy.
And George, you may just want to do your commercial break before we go back on air again.
That would be a pretty good idea. Okay, so yeah.
Grenadian General Insurance Company, strength and stability. Grenadian General Insurance Company. Tell your friends, tell your family. We cover householders comprehensive, motor and even fire too. Contractors all risk burglary, public liability, professional indemnity, directors liability, and wait, we still have more. Come and find out more what you're waiting for. Grenadian General.
We are located Scott Street, St. George's. For more information, call 440-2434.
Tell everybody.
I'm always on the move. Training, traveling, competing.
A commemorative postage stamp.
So it's good to know I have Co-op Bank in the palm of my hand.
Introducing e-banking, one of many customer convenience services from Grenada Cooperative Bank, and there's more to come.
It's swift, simple, and secure.
Welcome home.
It's good to be early. It's good to be early. Pay your GRENADA bill on time.
Can I have a chicken lunch, please? Large.
Real nice today.
I don't want that.
But you just asked for a chicken lunch.
I don't have problem with the lunch. Afraid the container.
What is the problem with it?
These styrofoam containers, they don't good for the environment. They shorten with life.
What foolishness you telling me? So what you want me to use?
Put my food in this.
Where you get that?
At the food fair, where you could get all biodegradable food boxes and disposable food supplies like cups, plates, anything you could think about. Name it, it's there. And they don't harm the environment. Food fair, taking the lead in cleaning up and protecting the environment. Hey, like you take me advice, you get in your biodegradable food supplies.
Well, girl, I supporting who's supporting the environment. That is why I shop in at food fair.
Food fair, where you can fill your baskets without emptying your pockets. Products distributed by Hubbard's agency, Kirani James Boulevard.
Hey, Lynn.
Hey, neighbor.
Here's the bill I asked you to pay for me.
How did you get your electricity bill to be so low?
For one, we size our transformers just for what we need. And we unplug transformers, chargers, and other devices when they're not in use. We also replaced our light bulbs with LEDs.
They burn less energy, right?
Much less. I even replaced the seal on my refrigerator door to keep the cold air in.
And GRENADA is always advising us not to open the fridge too often.
That's right. And my family washes and irons in bulk.
With fuel prices changing all the time, how do you know if it is working?
We pay attention to the usage history table. Over time, our average usage has decreased.
So while GRENADA can't control fuel prices, I can conserve energy and save money.
GRENADA, energizing our Grenada.
All right, folks, we are back. We're back. Where's oh, there she is, Beverly. Beverly, you're moving around the screen, aren't you?
Yeah. I don't think so.
You hot foot girl.
She's right here.
Michael?
But welcome back. I have to say welcome back to all the listeners and viewers.
Let's just make sure. Let's just make sure, Beverly, that everybody's hearing us. Michael, are you hearing us?
I'm hearing you.
Okay, Bert?
Yes, I'm here.
Catherine?
Hearing you.
George? George?
Right, so.
Oh, George.
Margaret.
In the house.
Okay.
All the suspects are accounted for. We welcome back our listeners and our viewers who have stayed with us through this very technically challenging edition of Mek We Chat. But we are going to be with you for maybe another 20 minutes or so to look at the Grenada Revolution, what fueled it, what was happening at the time, and also during these last few minutes, we want to look at whether or not any of those same elements still exist today, and whether or not the possibility is there that they could fuel another revolution. Before we went on that break, Michael, you were sharing with us that the whole, I'm at a loss for the right word to describe it. But when you look at the unmet expectations, and when you look at the class, the landed gentry, we did say that they possibly didn't join the fight so much. They were kind of on the sidelines, but there would have been sympathizers. But when you look at those who were involved in this period of, on the front line of this whole conscious movement for the Blacks and everything that it stood for then, do we have any of those elements? And I'm not referring to people in this sense, but any of the same types of divisions in the society that you believe could fuel another revolution, if not in this generation, maybe another generation or two to come? How do you see it, Michael, from a historic perspective? We say history as a way of repeating itself. Is Michael frozen?
Yeah, he looks as though he's frozen.
Oh dear.
Yeah, he looks. Yeah, he looks frozen.
Oh dear. Doctor, Margaret, you want to respond to that?
No, I was thinking that, I don't think that the conditions exist today. I think there was a certain mindset, at play. There were certain social conditions and movements at the time that the revolution took place that I don't think exist today at all. Again, as we mentioned earlier, there were the independence movements. You had the Black Power movement. And I think it was like a coming of age of people. There was a certain level of social consciousness that also existed in that period that I don't see existing today. I honestly, I don't think the conditions are there for something of the sort to happen. Just my take on it. I don't know, what Dr. Brathwaite or Michael, when he comes back, will have to say on that. But that's just my take. I don't think the conditions exist.
Bert?
I agree with you, Margaret. I don't think the conditions exist for a revolution, certainly in the form in which it took back in the 70s. The thinking of people is totally different. However, having said that, every government in the Caribbean basically struggles to keep its poverty levels down and keep people's expectation, to meet people's expectations. And so in that context, there is always the possibility of social change, not necessarily through revolution as it occurred in the 70s. And what we are finding happening in some Caribbean countries, not in Grenada, fortunately, but it's starting to happen increasingly in some Caribbean countries, is that the element of the drug business has crept in and caused a lot of social discomfort, and that's a euphemistic way of putting it. And that is something I think one has to watch. And then the other aspect is the world's economic order is changing drastically. And what we see happening in some of the leading countries is making that transformation even more dramatic. And in my way of thinking, it is going to have irrespective of what happens in countries like the United States, it is going to have some dramatic effects, because the balance of power internationally is probably going to move away from the Americas into the Far Eastern countries. And it's my feel, rightly or wrongly, that will make us the poor, because we have fought through periods and we have established links in North America, which has helped in a significant way to keep our people out of poverty in many instances, with remittances back home, etc. And if there is a diminution of that flow of monies, and if we are no longer in the money market internationally the way we are today, I think it will cause significant social changes, and we have to start to prepare ourselves for that period in the what will be a new world order that we'll be facing.
Yeah, and something else I wanted to add to what you were saying about the international dynamic. I think at the time that the Grenada Revolution occurred, and certainly at the time that a lot of these independence movements were happening in the regions, you also had the world divided into, stark poles. So you had the United States on one end of the spectrum and its allies, and then you had the then Soviet Union and their sets of countries on the other side of the spectrum, and sort of like in the middle you had the non-aligned countries. You don't have that today. That pole, that stark division doesn't really exist. I mean, certainly not along those lines. I mean, you have a different type of division and a different dynamic, but it seems to me that all these poles, the United States and the Soviet Union and a lot of parts of the Western world, is tilting in a decidedly right decision, right end of the spectrum, which is not necessarily a good thing, but that's where it seems to be tilting. It seems as though everything is lining up in that one direction as opposed to what existed at the time that the Grenada Revolution occurred.
And actually, I think we benefited from that polarization because the aid from Europe, the aid from America, from Canada was significant in those periods.
Definitely.
Michael, did you hear the context in which that came up, whether or not conditions exist today which could fuel another revolution, whether in this generation or in the generation to come? Do you think, because we have a way of saying history repeats itself, do you think a revolutionary history is somehow going to repeat itself, or the possibility exists? And I still think Michael's internet is not back 100%. Yes, it's acting up.
Michael?
Because one of the things I noticed when you look at these historic events is that the revolution, people rallied around a cause. There was something that enough people internalized. It became personal to them, and enough people felt that way for them to rally around this movement. And we discussed a while ago the change in the international dynamics, that the Cold War appears to be over. We are now in a different kind of international war where the balance of power is shifting. Once upon a time, it was held by the West, but that is shifting if it hasn't already shifted. And it is something that we have to watch closely, very, very closely, because we are still in the middle. The Caribbean is still not a superpower. No one is going to be seeking our advice or watching which way we are going so that they can follow us. We are still in the middle trying to decide which way to go depending on which way the wind blows. So,
I mean, I don't know. I mean, to what Beverly's saying too, I mean, I don't know, maybe it's a cynic in me, but I would also add to that, the days when, these two superpowers played countries off of each other in order to get influence and whatnot no longer exist. I mean, I'm not sure that you're relevant in that.
No, Margaret, I am agreeing with that. I am agreeing with that. But what I'm saying is, with the change in the world dynamics, the power base is going to be somewhere else. Because it's not that there isn't going to be a power base, but where it's going to be, that right now, as far as I am concerned, and this is the way I see it, that right now is in the making. We see China making moves to cement itself across the world. We see Russia in its own way trying to do the same. Countries in the Middle East are coming out and inviting people to become partners, trading partners with them. So it's no longer a Cold War, it's now a trade war. And the power base is going to lie with any country that can command that trade, that can command international trade. That is where the power base is going to lie.
Bev, just let me jump in here for a minute. It looks like Michael is back. Michael, can you hear us now?
I'm here now, yes.
Okay, Bev was asking you a question a little while ago. Take another shot at it, Bev.
Right. When we look back historically at the conditions which existed for the revolution in Grenada to happen, we see enough people rallying around a cause to move forward and try to achieve some kind of goal because of that. Right. Now, do you think conditions exist today where enough people may be motivated around a cause to unite and cause another revolution, whether in this generation or the generation to come?
Well, it's a difficult question from a standpoint of, there's a saying too that if you should ignore your history, then you're doomed to repeat it. And I don't think we are doing justice, to ourselves and justice to our history. But at the same time, looking around, I think that we have made quite a paradigm shift. And the conditions is really, really drifting rapidly to the extent or to the point now that you look at our youthful populations and you're wondering, what exactly is driving or motivating them. You look at the whole social construct of our society. Maybe we are reading more because now it's easier to read maybe on tablets or iPads or smartphones or those kind of things. But we have a dwindling reading public. We have dwindling standards. People are demanding less. We tend to just, as a roller coaster, life is short, so let us just enjoy it. When you look at the society before, it was, you could say, more balanced. Although you had a class structure, people really aspired to something, and the population was somewhat, not too evenly, but it was somewhat distributed. What we are seeing not only in Grenada and internationally, and there's a fear now that by 2050, the majority of people around the world will be living in cities. In Grenada, we have quite an urban drift. The biggest population now is between Tantin and Grandans, no longer in St. Andrews and in the real food basket. And so people now, you're asking what really is the aspiration. Yes, maybe we all want a job, but all young people maybe want a car before they want a house, so they could drive out into the country parts. We're more into a kind of, we are entitled to something rather than striving. So when you go through our school system and you see, what even some people at even, a first degree level, what they're putting out in comparison to the Alistair Hugheses and the Leslie Pears and the guys in the past who did not reach that kind of level, but when they write something, it was just perfect. You had to just pick it up and look at it and really, take it in. So you are really questioning, whether within that inner spirit, people have that kind of zeal, whether it was of old with the Uriah Butler, the Eric Gary, rather than trying themselves to make that kind of change. We want changes, but we think that we're entitled, So it is, maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I'm seeing.
The fire has gone out.
Hold on, Bev.
You know,
Bev,
I think.
Bev, I just want to get back to. I want to get back to Bert's response a little while ago. Bert, I was listening very intently to what you were saying, and you suggested, and I'm paraphrasing here, but you were suggesting that the conditions may not be ripe for another revolution, but I think you also accentuated, quote, in the form that we saw in 1979.
79.
Okay? Right. Bert, how else, what other form do you think may be used?
But I'm not referring to Grenada specifically. I'm looking through the region basically, and I'm looking socially at what is happening. And many Caribbean countries have 10, 20% unemployment rates. When you went back to the period of the 50s, 60s, many people migrated to Britain. The 70s thereafter, it to USA, Canada. But the Canadian market is still open. The US market is closed, probably closed tightly now, and even if it opens up in the future, probably will not. I would anticipate not open up to the extent that it was before. So we find ourselves with a significantly young population that whose expectations you've got to try to meet. Most of these folk are not going to go back into the land unless something there's some social change and some that they thinking is changes dramatically. There's a movement away from the land that has been for many decades now. So where does that burgeoning population go? Michael just mentioned the drift towards the cities. And indeed, in fact, we see that taking place. But even with the expansion of various opportunities that can occur, mainly in the tourism sector, can that absorb the majority of people that are coming forth. So we have some thinking to do and some soul searching, I think, as well as to how the average person coming out of school with average education, how they are going to be placed. I mean, you know, the employment rate in Grenada has dropped in recent times, but I think it's fair to say it is still not at an ideal level. And this goes for the entire Caribbean. And what worries me is that an increasing number of people in the region are moving, and young folk are looking towards the easier way of making money, and hence I alluded to the connection with the drug trade. You get in these turf wars, and that in itself creates another factor, because if you're going to have, we have throughout the Caribbean increasing violence, a lot of it associated with drugs. How are you going to prosper as a tourism destination in any event? So there are some issues, George, to answer your question, there are some social issues that we have to grapple with. And unless, you know, there's some rethinking of in a general way in our community, or the opening of new avenues. Now, Guyana, for argument's sake, Guyana is fortunate. They have now been able to open up avenues, and whereas in the 70s, 80s, 90s, Guyana was a place that many people ran away from. I think you will see a drift of people, of Caribbean peoples into Guyana, which is a huge landmass, and which it appears as though there's going to be significant wealth, and if it is managed well, will be able to accommodate lots of people. So there is going to be social movement, and you know, it's just to be seen what directions it takes. But the one that I am most concerned about is the any drift towards any further drift, and it's bad enough in some parts of the region. The drift towards the alternative trade, referring to the drug trade.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's really very interesting the way we have looked at this with the different type of society. And one thing is crystal clear is that the barriers which were there back in the 60s and 70s, those barriers to jobs, barriers to education, barriers to owning land, barriers to travel, barriers to different spheres on the social ladder, those barriers have been broken. So you have an entire generation of people who really have nothing to fight for because all the battles were fought back then. And it's like you said, Dr. Brathwaite, and it's that sense of entitlement. We have it now, so we don't have to fight for it anymore. But how about keeping it? How about maintaining it? If we continue along this path that we are on, do you see the possibility of us losing things that we have come to take for granted, and then maybe 100 years down the road we have to go and fight for those things to get them back?
That's what I was alluding to. As Michael said, people come up and many in the young generation, they feel a sense of entitlement to certain things. And when you have that feeling of entitlement and expectation, unless you can match it, you are prepared now. Not to say that I don't think that a significant percentage of younger folk are prepared to do it, but as I said, it's going to be far more challenging for people of my generation. When we left school, if you got a good education, you got a job, and you had a job, you were going to be working for life. That does not that's not occurring today again in many parts of the Caribbean and even here in Grenada. So and if we didn't get a job in those days that we wanted, we would have settled probably for a lesser job. Today, that is not as readily accepted. So it's one of the social issues that we will have to deal with increasingly in years to come.
Michael, are you back with us?
Yes, I am back. There's a saying, well, I guess it's very old, but it ties in around the revolutions, that the social structure after a revolution is always worse than the one that preceded it. And it's a powerful saying. Well, there's an argument too that because of that period, 79 to 83, we have lost so much, respect. Although to a point we gain self-respect in terms of who we are, but generally in terms of the society, we lost that kind of respect because the young people, they could just walk out from home because they know at least there was a place for them to go to. You had a militia camp, you had a PRA camp, you had, so they empower themselves more or less. Now that has all gone. They are in a kind of catch-22 situation. You're right in that maybe years to come things might change, but again, what we are seeing again too is that we have a lot of social challenges. People need places to stay. Caribbean islands, we have been warned for quite some time about the sale of our lands and so, and it seems as though it's not a priority.
And Michael, one of the things is that I think don't let us, as you said, the younger folk coming along, there's with this entitlement sense, they're automatically, anticipate certain things. Whereas in the revolution, one of the good things about the revolution was that it brought a certain pride and a certain self-confidence.
Yes, that's true.
To the country, and that was lost. I remember when I first started to work here in Grenada, everyone will cry that you could not get people motivated to come out. And when you try to organize programs in the community, you couldn't get, you could not mobilize people. This was in the late 80s. You could not mobilize people to come out just after
That's true.
period. You could no longer get people mobilized and interested in coming out and participating in things that were in their interest. So that period has been lost, and we have got to try and somewhere and recapture it and put all of this. I mean, I don't want to be sounding too negative. Put all of this against our fragility in the midst of the climate changes that we are facing. And one sees what has happened in Dominica, and every Caribbean island is at risk of similar devastation and medium to long term consequences as a result. Not that we had hurricanes in the past, but it was the want of that nature, and we see what the hurricanes, notwithstanding what the naysayers and the high powers of the United States are saying, we see what those disasters are causing.
But Beverley also made a very strong point in that because you have fewer and fewer people owning more and more of the resources, not only maybe in the Caribbean, internationally, that too could cause another kind of pull factor, which I guess at some point will have to be managed properly, because again, people will see, we need that. You have so much in abundance. And sometimes even today, look at our, small society. A small farmer, yes, we encourage people to have things, but a small farmer will feel that he's entitled. He can have 50 goats or sheep, but not 1 square inch of land. And he feels he's entitled to graze that animal out there, and you can't tell him anything. And you have many other, instances out there, not just the young folks, but the older folks as well too. So that kind of tension maybe too can create some other waves.
Right. We have to wrap up, guys, because our session is going to break again, and we will not come back after this. But this has certainly been one very interesting discussion, and I would like to do this again, to invite you both back for us to have another discussion along the historic lines of where we are and where we're going. Because one thing for sure. Yes, Margaret.
Oh, no, I didn't say anything. I was just, I'm agreeing with you. I'm agreeing with you.
What Bev had said earlier about the revolutions in the Caribbean, and we had some soft ones, which I thought maybe she wanted to mention or could have mentioned, like for instance, in the same 1780s, that period. But today, if you say that in Trinidad, I guess you might have to jump the first plane to leave, because all the carnival in Trinidad already came from Grenada, and many things around the Caribbean came from Grenada. So right. Grenada has been, you even have quite a part of the population, even in Suriname, came from Grenada, and the Belfons and the, so again, but whether our young people or people in general really are aware of those things, the pivotal role of Grenada within the Caribbean society, the first press, or free press, and all those kind of newspapers, and so we need to have those things that out there so people can understand, that has the self-worth.
The sensitization, which we mentioned at the beginning, our history is being buried, and we need to unbury it. Maybe it's a start right here to dig up some of those important things and put them in the forefront of our youth, who really have nothing to hold on to if they don't have their history. So guys, thank you all for being here, for being patient with us, listeners, viewers, and suspects for being patient with us through this technically challenging evening. And George at the control, thank you for doing your best to keep it together. And we look forward to regrouping next week, Thursday, God's willing, for another edition of Mek We Chat.
By the way, Bev, I think we ought to let them know that we are going to put this up on. It's going to be up on Facebook and YouTube a little later on tonight, once the internet stabilizes well enough for us to be able to get it up. Okay.
Right. Okay. Alrighty.
It's always still going to be up.
Good evening to everyone.
Pardon me?
Yes.
What was that?
No, I said good evening.
Good evening.
Bert,
All right.
Bert, are you going to promise us that you'll come back?
I'll be around, George. I hope I'll be around.
And Michael?
All right, I'll try.
Okay. Well, next time around, we'll give Michael some tinted glasses so we don't see that glow. Did you notice that?
You don't see what?
Look at his eye. Well, he's taking the glasses off now, but look at that. Okay, guys, thank you very much. Pleasure having you.
Bye-bye.
Margaret, not Margaret. Catherine, good to see you.
What?
Okay.
Catherine, she's all lit up tonight.
I know.
Yes, they can see my face.
Yes. Max.
Yes.
Max, we'll keep in touch, my friend. Take care.
All right.
Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.